That night, at 11:47 p.m., when she picked up her phone, she didn't know how the world would change. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was known as one of the youngest and sharpest voices of the Democratic Party. As the screen's blue light hit her face, her fingers touched the keys. One tweet. Just a few words. But these words would trigger the biggest crisis of her career overnight. Just as we must honor the humanity of hostages, so too must we center the humanity of the 40,000 Palestinians killed under Israeli bombardment. She hit the enter button. The tweet shot into the digital universe. The first 5 minutes were silent. Then 10 minutes. After that, the gates of hell opened. Twitter's algorithm pushed the tweet to millions of screens. The initial reactions were supportive. "Finally someone is telling the truth," wrote one user. "UC is showing courage," another added. But this wave of support was just the calm before the storm. Because the internet never forgets and never forgives. The first crack came at 2:13 in the morning. A news site ran it as a headline, "UC ignores Hamas attack while claiming Israel is bombing." The headline distorted the truth, but nobody cared. Because in the internet age, perception was more powerful than reality. At 6 a.m., her phone started ringing. The voice of Oliver Hidalgo Leban from the campaign team was panicked. "Congresswoman, have you seen the situation? You're trending but this isn't good." At that moment, in the cold morning light of New York, she looked out of her bedroom window. Life was continuing normally on the streets of the Bronx. But inside the screen, a lynch mob was forming. On Twitter, her name was rising with the hashtag #OakApologize hashtag. Thousands of tweets per minute. "She's defending terrorists." Some wrote, "Jew hater." Others screamed. But the most painful were the reactions from her own base. At 8:30 a.m., she connected to Jake Tapper's program on CNN. Under the studio's cold lights, the questions came hard. How do you interpret Israel's right to defend itself? Tapper was staring intently. UC took a breath. Of course Israel has the right to defend itself but... Tapper interrupted. Where does the 40,000 figure come from? From the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry? At that moment, millions of people were locked onto their television screens. The expression on UC's face was shifting from defense to guilt. The numbers. In United Nations reports. But you used figures sourced from Hamas, Tapper insisted. The interview was a disaster. Clips went viral within minutes. Shared with the headline UC collapsing. That afternoon, Jesse Waters from Fox News mocked her for 10 minutes. Now socialist Ocasio-Cortez is acting as a spokesperson for terrorists, Waters said. The studio audience laughed in bursts. But the real crushing blow came from her own party. At 2:22 p.m., Democratic Representative Ritchie Torres tweeted, comparing Israel to the Romans is anti-Semitism. Period. He didn't name names, but everyone knew who he meant. Within minutes, Democratic Senator Brad Schneider added, thinking that pursuing peace caused or justified the October 7th attack is both ignorant and abhorrent. UC's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages were pouring in, emails were flooding. "You disappointed us," wrote one supporter. "We thought you were progressive but you turned out to be anti-Semitic," another added. That evening, walking through the halls of Congress, she felt the stares of her colleagues. Some turned their heads. Some looked with pity. Democratic Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, passing by, whispered with a cold expression, "I hope you thought this through." At 9 p.m., the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, released a statement. But this time, it wasn't to defend her. The fact that Representative Ocasio-Cortez acknowledges that Israel is committing genocide makes her support for military aid all the more disappointing. At that moment, she was sitting in the dim light of her office. Outside, the noise of the Bronx could be heard, but inside there was silence. On her screen, thousands of messages were piling up. Some contained death threats. "We will find you," one wrote. "You will pay for Gaza," another added. The next morning, her campaign office was found vandalized. Written on the wall in red spray paint, UC equals genocide accomplice. Oliver called in a panic. Police came. "Security needs to be increased. We're receiving serious threats." But the internet wasn't forgiving. When August came, the Democratic National Convention, DNC, would gather in Chicago. UC had been given a primetime speaking opportunity. 7.5 minutes. In front of thousands of delegates. But now, every word would be debated. Every sentence would be dissected. 3 days before the convention, the uncommitted movement brought a demand: let a Palestinian American speak. Kamala Harris's campaign rejected the request. The DNC leadership remained silent. AOC joined the protesters that night via FaceTime. "We must show our shared humanity," she said. "This is a basic thing to ask for." Her voice was tired. There was tension on her face. Because she knew that every word she said could cause a new attack. When convention night came, she took the stage. The delegates stood up. "AOC! AOC!" they shouted. But her speech was listened to carefully. "Kamala Harris is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza," she said. The words formed the most controversial moment of the speech. Because the next day, The Nation magazine published an article, "AOC's DNC speech was a betrayal of the Gaza movement." The article was merciless. The AOC of 2018 would have taken this opportunity and spoken with clarity on behalf of the movement. Instead, we saw the 2024 AOC. She tacked away from the movement in favor of her own rising star. When she read it, something broke inside. Because the criticism wasn't just coming from enemies. It was coming from her own movement, her own people. September came. Palestinian poet Mossab Abu Toha wrote on X, "AOC, you have failed the Palestinian people. You are complicit in the crimes. Protecting a criminal not only emboldens them but also enables the continuation of their crimes. Do you hear us, AOC?" That night, exiting a shopping center in Brooklyn, masked activists surrounded her. "You refuse to call it a genocide," one shouted. Cameras were rolling. AOC stopped. "I need you to understand that this is not okay," she said. Her voice was trembling. "Over 30,000 people are dead, AOC," another activist shouted. "Can't you just say it once? Just one word. That's all." At that moment, the world froze. Cameras were focused on her face. Tears were welling in her eyes. But the words weren't coming. Because every word could be a weapon. Every sentence could trigger a new crisis. Her friend pulled her away from there. The video was viewed millions of times within hours. Shared with the headline "AOC flips out at protesters." Comments were cruel. "Look how she's running," one wrote. "Can't face the truth," said another. But the biggest blow came in July 2025. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene proposed an amendment, cut $500 million in funding for Israel's Iron Dome defense system. In the vote, only 6 lawmakers supported it. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Summer Lee, Cori Bush. But not AOC. AOC voted against the amendment. 422-6. Rejected by an overwhelming margin. But AOC's vote had made a difference. Social media exploded. "AOC supports genocide," was written. "She betrayed her own people," was shouted. The Democratic Socialists of America released a harsh statement. "The fact that Representative Ocasio-Cortez acknowledges that Israel is committing genocide makes her support for military aid all the more disappointing." AOC defended herself on X. "Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment does nothing to cut off offensive aid to Israel. It only cuts defensive Iron Dome capacities while allowing the actual bombs killing Palestinians to continue." But the words weren't enough. That night, the Bronx campaign office was vandalized. Written on the wall, "AOC, wash the blood off your hands." Security cameras showed 3 masked individuals. Police came but no one was arrested. Oliver called by phone. His voice was trembling. "Congresswoman, we're receiving death threats. We must take this seriously. Security measures need to be taken for you, the staff, and volunteers." That night, she looked out her window. The streets were deserted. But the internet never slept. Thousands of messages, hundreds of thousands of tweets, millions of views. All targeting her. But the most painful was the silence of her squad colleagues. Rashida Tlaib made a statement, "Standing against genocide means no exceptions. Even the Iron Dome." Ilhan Omar tweeted, "As the genocide in Gaza continues, Congress members are voting to fund both Israel's defensive and offensive capabilities. This is immoral." AOC was alone. When October came, she was asked in an interview, "Do you believe Israel is intentionally trying to destroy Gaza?" At that moment, she was sitting under the cold lights of the CNN studio. Jake Tapper was staring intently. AOC took a breath. "What we're seeing with forced famine is beyond our ability to deny or explain away." "But is it genocide?" Tapper insisted. "I believe we have crossed the threshold of intent," AOC said. When the words left her mouth, the world spun again. Because the word genocide from a congresswoman's mouth wasn't just a word. It was an accusation. A judgment. Within hours, it was a headline on Fox News, "AOC accuses Israel of genocide." Debated on MSNBC, "Has AOC crossed the line?" Trending on Twitter, #AOC apologize back on the agenda. But this time, she didn't apologize. When November came, a vote was held in the House of Representatives, $20 billion in additional military aid to Israel. AOC voted against it. But the bill passed by an overwhelming majority. 372 to 58. That night, she was sitting in her office. On her screen, images from Gaza were coming. Collapsed buildings. Crying children. Emergency rooms overflowing in hospitals. More than 40,000 dead. Half of them children. Her phone vibrated. A message: "We used to love you, AOC. But not anymore. Gaza's blood is on your hands too." At that moment, something shattered inside. Because she understood that no matter what she did, she couldn't win. If she defended Israel, progressives would attack. If she defended Palestine, centrist Democrats would lynch her. If she tried to maintain balance, both sides would declare her a traitor. There was no such thing as the right sentence on the internet. In December 2023, she shared a Christmas message. On her Instagram story, a photo of a baby doll in rubble. The caption read, "Jesus was born in modern-day Palestine. Under a government carrying out a massacre of innocents." The reaction was immediate. Former ADL leader Abraham Foxman tweeted, "Hateful and dangerous," invoking the charge that Jews are again killing Jesus. Former Israeli Ambassador David Friedman added, "A reinvention of history." Democratic Representative Ritchie Torres criticized indirectly, "It is anti-Semitic to compare Israelis to the Romans who murdered Jesus." AOC's office made no comment. Because now, every word had become a weapon. Every sentence, a new crisis. Every tweet, a new lynch mob. In January 2025, when President Joe Biden was sworn in, AOC stood among the crowd. An expressionless mask was on her face. Because now, she had learned to hide her emotions. Showing weakness on the internet meant death. That day, Rashida Tlaib introduced a resolution, recognizing that Israel has committed the crime of genocide against the Palestinian people. 20 Democratic representatives signed it. But AOC's name wasn't there. At night, she watched Tlaib's speech on her screen. "Why does our government always have enough money for bombs, to kill people, but never seems to have money to provide people with healthcare, housing, enough food?" Tlaib was asking. AOC closed the screen. Because she knew the answer: political calculations. Lobby pressures. Election calculations. Truth didn't matter. What mattered was perception. In February 2025, she spoke on a podcast. Left influencer Hassan Piker said, "The October 7th attack was a direct consequence of the Abraham Accords." AOC nodded. 10,000%. Absolutely. The clip went viral. Democratic colleagues reacted with anger. An anonymous representative spoke to Axios, "Reckless and problematic. What is a member of Congress doing screwing around on Twitch?" An AOC explained to Axios, "None of her colleagues have contacted her on this issue." But the words were empty. Because the lynch mob had already formed. In March 2025, she spoke in the House of Representatives. She stood at the podium. Cameras were focused on her. "This is not just about Israel or Gaza. This is about us. The world will never be the same." The words spread into the void. There was silence in the chamber. Because everyone knew that this war wasn't just in the Middle East. It was inside America. It was in the halls of Congress. It was in every corner of social media. And AOC was right in the middle of the battlefield. In April 2025, a heckler stopped her in Brooklyn. "Can't you say genocide?" they shouted. AOC turned. There was anger on her face. "You need to understand this is not okay. It's fucked up," she shouted. The video went viral. Shared with the headline, "AOC loses it." But this time, she didn't defend herself. Because she was tired. Tired of the lynching, the criticism, the constant attacks. In May 2025, a bomb threat came to the campaign office. The team was evacuated. Police came. Bomb squad searched. Nothing was found. But the message was clear: you're not safe. In June 2025, the DSA made a decision. They condemned AOC's votes but didn't expel her from the party. Because they knew that losing her meant losing the face of the movement. In July 2025, a new vote came. $832 billion defense budget for Israel. AOC voted against it. But the bill passed. 221 to 209. That night, she was sitting at home. On television, news from Gaza was coming. UN officials were warning, "We're on the brink of famine." Humanitarian aid was being blocked. Netanyahu was refusing a ceasefire. Her phone vibrated. A message: "We still hope, AOC. Please don't give up," but another message: "You betrayed us. "We will never forgive you." And another, "Blood is on your hands." At that moment, she stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the lights of New York were shining. Millions of people were living their lives. But in the internet world, a war was ongoing. And she was at the center of the war. Because she had posted a tweet. Just one tweet. A few words. But those words had changed everything overnight. The internet didn't forget. The internet didn't forgive. And AOC now knew that there was no such thing as the right word. Every word could be a weapon. Every sentence, an invitation to a new lynch mob. When August 2025 came, the DNC gathered again. But this time, AOC didn't take the stage. Because campaign managers had warned, the risk is too high. Every word could be a bomb. That night, she was sitting in a hotel. On television, delegates were applauding Kamala Harris. Unity. Unity. They were shouting. But AOC knew that unity was an illusion. Because Gaza had opened a deep wound within the party. In September 2025, she was asked in an interview, "Do you regret it? Posting that tweet?" AOC paused. Cameras were focused on her. Millions of people were waiting for the answer. "No," she said. "Because telling the truth always comes with a cost. But silence costs more." The words were broadcast. And again, the internet exploded. AOC has no regrets. Was written. Still defending, was shouted. But this time, AOC didn't listen. Because she had finally understood, she couldn't win. No matter what she did, one side would attack. One side would lynch. On the internet, there was no such thing as the right sentence. There was only perception. And perception was always more powerful than reality. In October 2025, a ceasefire was declared in Gaza. But 3 days later, attacks resumed. AOC tweeted, "Netanyahu blocked aid for 2 weeks. Last night, he ordered strikes that killed over 400 Palestinians. Congress must uphold our laws and stop weapons transfers to Israel." The reaction was immediate. She said it again. Was written. "Terrorist supporter," was shouted. In November 2025, the campaign office was vandalized again. This time, glass was broken. They went inside and spray-painted the walls, "Genocide Accomplice." Oliver called. "We're increasing security. This must be taken seriously." But AOC was used to it now. To the threats. To the lynching. To the constant attacks. Because this was the new normal. The brutal reality of the internet age. In December 2025, as the last day of the year came, she sat at her computer. On the screen was the year's chronology. The tweet in January. The lynching in February. The protests in March. The vandalism in April. The bomb threat in May. The death threats in June. The voting crisis in July. The DNC drama in August. The interview explosion in September. The new tweet crisis in October. The new vandalism in November. 1 year. Just 1 year. But it felt like a lifetime had passed. Her phone vibrated. A message, "We'll remember you in 2026. Was it a threat? Support? It didn't matter anymore. Because AOC had understood, the internet's memory was infinite. A tweet could follow you for a lifetime. A word could destroy a career. And that tweet was still there. Viewed millions of times. Shared thousands of times. Debated hundreds of thousands of times. Just as we must honor the humanity of hostages, so too must we center the humanity of the 40,000 Palestinians killed under Israeli bombardment. The words hadn't been deleted. Because the internet never forgot. And AOC now knew that tweet would follow her for the rest of her career. In every interview it would be asked, "Why did you post that tweet?" In every vote it would be remembered, "Are you against Israel?" In every campaign it would be used, "AOC defended genocide." But worst of all was the war within herself. Because she knew the truth, people were dying in Gaza. Children were starving. Hospitals were being bombed. And the world was watching. But if she spoke out, she was lynched. If she stayed silent, she was complicit. 2 choices. Both meant losing. That night, she closed the screen. Went outside. Walked the streets of the Bronx. Street lamps illuminated the path. People were living normal lives. But AOC knew that in the internet world, the war never ended. Because she had posted a tweet. And the internet never forgave. At that moment, she asked herself a question: what mattered more, the truth or perception? The answer disappeared into silence. Because in the internet age, the line between truth and perception had long been erased. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had learned the most brutal lesson of this new reality. One tweet can change everything overnight. And there may never be a way back. But the story didn't end there. In January 2024, a debate erupted in the House of Representatives. A resolution endorsing the IRA definition of anti-Semitism would be voted on. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar announced they would vote against it. This resolution will stifle free speech, Omar had said. It will be used to silence criticism of Israel. But Haq thought differently. The resolution wasn't binding. It was just symbolic. And maybe supporting this symbol could silence the anti-Semitism accusations. When voting day came, Haq voted yes. The reaction was like lightning. Mike Casca, her chief of staff, immediately went into damage control on X. She opposes codification of IRA. This non-binding resolution didn't do that. But the words were empty. Because the Electronic Intifada published a merciless article, Haq votes to back Israel lobby's bogus anti-Semitism definition. The article called Casca's statement dishonest and disingenuous. If Haq truly opposes IRA definition codification, why would she vote for a resolution promoting it as best practice? The article asked. That night, Haq's phone exploded. Betrayal. The messages read. You sold out the Palestinians. The emails shouted. But what hurt most was Tlaib's silence. She made no statement. Posted no tweet. Just silently, distanced herself. The squad was beginning to crack. In February 2024, Haq avoided using the word genocide in an interview. On Meet the Press, the host asked, "Do you call this genocide?" Haq paused. Seconds turned into hours. Regarding forced famine. We're seeing something we cannot deny, but is it genocide? The host insisted. That word carries extraordinary weight. I need to be sure before saying it. Tlaib had been clear on the same program, yes, this is genocide. Omar had written on Twitter, Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Cori Bush had shouted from the congressional podium, stop the genocide. But Haq had hesitated. And the internet didn't forgive hesitation. Haq is a coward. Was written. Can't tell the truth, was shouted. She's moved to the center. Was accused. When March 2024 came, Haq finally used the word. On CNN, she told Jake Tapper, I believe we have crossed the threshold of intent. But it was too late. Because the damage had already been done. The progressive base had labeled her hesitant. Centrist Democrats had branded her extreme. She was caught between two fires. In April 2024, protests erupted at Columbia University. Students set up tents for Palestine. Police raided the campus. Hundreds of arrests. Haq visited the campus. Photos went viral. Haq was talking with protesters. Listening to them. But she didn't give a speech. Didn't hold a microphone. Just listened. Where is Haq? Asked a student leader. She's not speaking out. Just taking photos. That night, it trended on X, #OakPhotoOp. She only came for appearances, was written. Where is she when real action is needed? Was asked. But if she had given a speech? She would be accused of stoking anti-Semitism. She would be lynched for supporting student terrorists. Again, she couldn't win. In May 2024, she appeared on stream with Hassan Piker on Twitch. The left influencer said, October 7th was a direct consequence of the Abraham Accords. Haq nodded. 10,000%. The clip was cut. Taken out of context. Spread with the headline Haq justifies Hamas attack. Democratic colleagues were furious. An anonymous representative spoke to Axios, reckless. What is a member of Congress doing on Twitch? An Haq aide defended, none of her colleagues have contacted her on the issue. But the lynch had already begun. Fox News covered it for 10 minutes. With the headline Socialist Haq legitimizes terror. In June 2024, two squad members lost their primaries. Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush were defeated by challengers backed by IPAC financing. The squad was dissolving. Haq was asked at a press conference, is the squad ending? No, she said. We're still here. Still fighting. But there was exhaustion in her eyes. Because the war seemed endless. In July 2024, preparations for the Democratic National Convention began. The uncommitted movement brought a demand, a Palestinian speaker. The campaign manager rejected the request. The risk is too high for party unity. Haq lobbied behind the scenes. This is a basic matter of humanity, she said. At least one speaker. But the answer was clear, no. When convention night came, Haq took the stage. Prime time. 7.5 minutes. in front of thousands of delegates. "Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire in Gaza," she said. The words were debated the moment they came out. Because Harris was part of the Biden administration. And the Biden administration had approved $20 billion in military aid to Israel. The next day, The Nation wrote, "UC's DNC speech was a betrayal of the Gaza movement." Jacobin added, "The UC of 2018 died. The UC of 2024 chose to be the party's rising star." Reading it, something broke inside. Because these were her own people. Her own movement. And now, they had become strangers to her. In August 2024, on the last night of the DNC, delegates held a sit-in outside. The uncommitted movement continued their demand for a Palestinian speaker. UC joined via FaceTime. "We must show our share too." "Where is UC?" asked a delegate. "Easy from a screen." "But why isn't she here with us?" Because she knew that if she was physically there, the media would label her rebellious. Party leadership would punish her. She would be removed from future committee assignments. Political calculations. Always political calculations. In September 2024, the election campaign accelerated. Kamala Harris was holding rallies in swing states. UC came out to support her. In Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. But in Michigan, Palestinian Americans shouted, "UC, you sold us out." They unfurled banners, "No to Genocide Joe, no to UC." At that moment, she was standing backstage. The sound reached her ears. There was a weight in her heart. Because she knew they were right. In October 2024, the election came. Harris lost. Trump won. Michigan turned red. Analysts debated the reasons. The Gaza factor, some said. Palestinian Americans stayed home. Protest votes increased. UC, watching the results, asked herself, "Could I have done more?" The answer was uncertain. In November 2024, the new Congress convened. UC took a senior position on the Oversight Committee. Vice-ranking member. A powerful position. "See?" some said. "She moved to the center. She was rewarded." Swallowed by the system, others said. The end of the squad. But UC knew the truth was more complex. Because she could make change from the inside. She could hold hearings. She could launch investigations. But what was the cost? Lowering her voice? Making compromises? In December 2024, Christmas came. UC shared a message again. This time, more carefully. "May peace and humanity reach everyone. In Gaza, in Israel, everywhere." The reaction came again but less violently. Because now, she was carefully choosing her words. She was weighing every sentence for an hour. She was reviewing every tweet 3 times. Spontaneity had died. Calculated communication had taken its PL, but Gaza was still burning. Israel was continuing its attacks. The death toll had exceeded 45,000. Hospitals were being destroyed. Schools were being bombed. And the world was still watching. In February 2025, the UN Human Rights Commission published a report, "Israel has committed the crime of genocide in Gaza." UC tweeted, "The UN's findings are clear. International law must be enforced." The reaction was mixed again. Finally, some said. Too late, others said. Because the internet never forgave. And UC had learned that. In March 2025, Israel struck the Holy Family Catholic Church. At least 3 people died. Including the priest. Marjorie Taylor Greene proposed an amendment, cut $500 million from all of Israel's defense funds. UC voted against it. Because the amendment only cut the defense system. Not offensive weapons. And UC's logic was clear, Iron Dome protects Israeli civilians. The real problem is the offensive weapons killing Palestinians. But the internet didn't hear logic. It only saw the result, UC supported Israel. The DSA released a statement, "We are disappointed. UC's position is indefensible." That night, the Bronx office was vandalized. They wrote, "Wash the blood off your hands." Security cameras showed 3 people. Police took a report. But no one was arrested. In April 2025, UC made a decision, she wouldn't stay silent. She wouldn't compromise. She gave a floor speech. She stood at the congressional podium. Cameras were focused on her. Hunger is being used as a weapon in Gaza. Children are being forced to eat grass. This is collective punishment. A crime under international law. The words were powerful. Clear. But also risky. Republicans attacked, UC is legitimizing terrorism. Centrist Democrats criticized, crossing party lines. But this time, Ock didn't defend herself. Didn't release a statement. Just continued her stance. Because she had finally understood, she wouldn't win. No matter what she did, one side would lynch. But at least she could stay true to her own truth. In May 2025, death threats increased. The FBI launched an investigation. Security detail was reinforced. One message was particularly disturbing: "We will find you. You will pay for Gaza." Oliver was worried. "Congresswoman, maybe we should lower the profile for a while." But Ock refused. "No. I won't be silenced. I won't give up from fear." Because she knew that if she backed down now, the internet would win. Cancel culture would win. In June 2025, during a protest demonstration, a young activist asked, "Ock, are you still with us?" At that moment, the world froze. Because the question was simple but loaded. "Are you still with us?" Ock looked into her eyes. "Always." "Then why did you vote against that amendment?" "Because," Ock said, "I need to think strategically. Cutting only Iron Dome doesn't help Palestinians. The real focus should be cutting offensive weapons." The activist nodded. "I understand. But people want to see clear stance." "I know," Ock said. "And I hear you." In July 2025, a new vote came. Defense Appropriations Act. $832 billion. Inside, $600 million more for Israel. Ock voted against it. But the bill passed. 221 to 209. That night, she wrote on Twitter, "While genocide continues in Gaza, the U.S. continues weapons aid. This is immoral." The reaction was mixed again. But this time, Ock didn't care. Because she had finally understood, truth and perception were different things. And in the internet age, perception would always win. But she had chosen to fight for truth. In August 2025, a year had passed. Exactly 1 year since that tweet. Ock sat at her computer. Found the old tweet. It was still there. 15.8 million views. Thousands of retweets. Hundreds of thousands of comments. Just as we must honor the humanity of hostages, so too must we center the humanity of the 40,000 Palestinians killed under Israeli bombardment. Now the death toll had exceeded 45,000. Half children. But the world was still debating. Was she right? Was she wrong? Israel or Palestine? Ock or Tlaib? The question seemed endless. Because the internet didn't seek answers. It wanted debate. It wanted conflict. It wanted lynching. And Ock was stuck in the middle of it. That night, she looked out the window. Life was continuing on the streets of the Bronx. Children were playing. People were walking. The world was turning. But in the internet world, the war never ended. Because she had posted a tweet. Just one tweet. And that tweet had followed her for a year. In every interview. In every vote. In every speech. Why did you post that tweet? Do you regret it? Would you post it again? The answers were complex. But one thing was clear: if time went back, she would post it again. Because truth mattered. The lives of Palestinian children mattered. The lives of Israeli hostages mattered. They were all human. They all had value. And saying that, even if it required a cost, needed to be said. In September 2025, a new crisis erupted. The Trump administration approved additional weapons sales to Israel. Ock immediately tweeted, "Selling weapons while genocide continues is complicity in crime." The reaction came differently than expected. This time, there was more support. Because now, more people were seeing the truth. UN reports. International courts. Human rights organizations. All were saying the same thing: there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And Ock's voice was no longer alone. In October 2025, a ruling came. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. War crimes and crimes against humanity. Ock tweeted, "Justice, though delayed, arrives." This time, the lynching was less. Because now, the truth had come out. In November 2025, a ceasefire agreement was signed. Guns in Gaza finally fell silent. Hostage exchange began. Humanitarian aid finally arrived. But the damage was permanent. 47,000 dead. 100,000 wounded. 2 million displaced. Ock was asked at a press conference, "Now, looking back, would you post that tweet again?" She paused. Cameras were focused on her. The world was waiting for the answer. "Yes," she said. "Because every life is valuable. Israeli and Palestinian. And saying that can never be wrong. The words echoed in the hall. That night, she was sitting at home. Her phone vibrated. A message, "Thank you, AOC. You are our voice." And another message, "You're a traitor. We will never forgive." Two messages. Two worlds. Two realities. But AOC had finally understood, in the internet age, everyone loses. Because the only winner is perception. Only lynching. Only rage. Truth gets lost. Humanity is forgotten. Empathy dies. And in the end, the only question that remains is: in the internet age, is there such a thing as the right word? AOC knew the answer, no. But she still had to speak. Still had to fight. Still had to stand for truth. Because silence was a bigger crime. And history wouldn't forgive her. That night, she closed the screen. Went outside. Looked at the stars. And made a promise to herself. Let the lynching come, let the threats come, let the vandalism come. But I won't be silent. Because truth always matters. More than perception. And from that moment on, AOC changed. She was no longer playing the internet game. She was creating her own game. Because she had posted a tweet. And that tweet hadn't destroyed her. It had transformed her. And now, she was stronger. Clearer. More determined. Because the internet had tested her. And she had survived. One tweet later, the world had changed. But AOC had emerged stronger. In December 2025, the last day of the year came. AOC was sitting in her office. Outside, snow was falling. Painting the streets of the Bronx white. On her screen, the year's chronology was open. Every month, a new crisis. Every week, a new lynching. Every day, a new threat. But now, looking back, she saw something: resistance. In January she had posted a tweet. In February she had been lynched. In March protests had come. In April her office had been vandalized. In May she had received death threats. In June her friends had distanced themselves. In July a voting crisis had erupted. In August the DNC drama had occurred. In September an interview explosion had happened. In October a new crisis had been triggered. In November vandalism had come again. But she was still standing. Her phone rang. It was Oliver. "Congresswoman, have you prepared your New Year's message?" AOC paused. A year ago, she was measuring every word, weighing every sentence. But now? "Oliver," she said. "This time, I'll write from my heart. No calculations. Just truth." "But the risk?" Oliver's voice was worried. "Risk is always there," AOC said. "But there's no bigger risk than silence." That night, she wrote the tweet. 2025 taught me something: truth is expensive but silence is more expensive. We lost 47,000 lives in Gaza. Each one, a universe. Hostage families in Israel are still waiting. Each one, a tragedy. Speaking for peace is hard but necessary. In 2026 I'll be braver. You should be too. She hit share. The first minutes passed quietly. Then reactions started coming. "Thank you, AOC. This is the leadership we need. You're a traitor. You're defending terrorists. Finally, speaking truth. Anti-Semite. You're the first politician to see the usual polarization. But this time, AOC didn't care. Because she knew that truth didn't take sides. Truth was just truth." When January 2026 came, the new term began. Congress convened. AOC stood for her oath. "I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution." The words were familiar. But this time, they felt different. Because a year ago, she was naive. Now, she was experienced. A year ago, she wanted to win everyone's love. Now, she just wanted to serve truth. A year ago, she feared lynching. Now, she expected it. Because truth would always receive backlash. In February 2026, a new crisis erupted. The Trump administration announced a plan to rebuild Gaza. But the plan involved displacing Palestinians. AOC immediately tweeted, "This is an ethnic cleansing plan. It must be rejected." The reaction was like lightning. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "Socialist AOC defending terrorists again." Fox News covered it for hours. AOC attacks Trump's peace plan. But this time, AOC wasn't alone. Because the international community was saying the same thing. UN, the plan violates international law. European Union, Palestinian rights must be respected. Human Rights Watch, Forced displacement is a war crime. And Oc's voice was now part of a chorus. Not a solitary scream. In March 2026, the squad regathered. Tlaib, Omar, Presley, Lee, and Oc. They sat in a meeting. Tlaib asked, "Oc, last year was hard. How are you?" Oc smiled. "It was hard. But I survived." "You know," Tlaib said, "sometimes we didn't agree with you. But we never doubted that in your heart, you were in the right place." Omar added, "We all use different strategies. But the goal is the same, justice." At that moment, Oc understood, the squad wasn't consensus. It was a movement. And movements needed different voices. In April 2026, a book offer came. One tweet later, Oc's Gaza War. The publisher offered a six-figure deal. Oliver was excited. "This is your chance to tell your story." But Oc refused. "No. Because the story isn't over yet. And a book would lock me in the past. I want to look to the future." In May 2026, primaries began. In Oc's district, a challenger emerged. Backed by AIPAC. Campaign slogan, "Oc betrayed Israel. Time to replace her." The campaign played dirty. Ads used Oc's most controversial clips. "Terrorist supporter," they wrote. "Anti-Semite," they accused. But Oc didn't back down. She spoke at rallies. "You can lynch me. You can slander me. But the one thing you can accuse me of, staying silent." Primary night came. Results flashed on the board. Oc got 68%. Her opponent, only 32%. In her victory speech, she said, "I'll tell you something. Cancel culture is temporary. But truth is permanent. And I will always be on the side of truth." The applause from the hall shook the roof. In June 2026, she was invited to an international conference. Peace and Justice in the Middle East Conference in Brussels. In September 2026, the general election came. Oc won easily. Got 72% of the vote. But the real surprise was the squad's expansion. New members were elected. All names known for their clarity on Gaza. The movement was growing. In October 2026, 2 years had passed. Exactly 2 years since that tweet. Oc sat at her computer. Found the old tweet. "Just as we must honor the humanity of hostages, so too must we center the humanity of the 40,000 Palestinians killed under Israeli bombardment." Now the number had exceeded 50,000. But the world could no longer ignore it. International courts were issuing rulings. Human rights organizations were publishing reports. Media was conveying truth. And Oc's tweet was now like a manifesto. A symbol of courage. An example of standing for truth. That night, she wrote a new tweet. 2 years ago today, I posted a tweet. It taught me a lot. Cancel culture. The power of perception. But most of all, the value of truth. If time went back, I'd post it again. Because some things are more important than lynching. Humanity is one of them. She shared it. This time, the reaction was different. Because 2 years later, the world had changed. "Oc, you're inspiring," was written. "We're proud of you," was said. "Keep speaking for truth," was added. Of course, there was still criticism. Still lynching. But it was balanced. Because truth had finally surfaced. And now, no one could ignore it. In November 2026, she received an award. International Human Rights Award for Courage. Speaking at the ceremony, she said, "This award isn't for me. It's for those who cannot speak out. For those who are lynched but cannot be silenced. For those who pay the price for truth." 2 years ago, I posted a tweet. And I was lynched. But now, I'm here. Because truth always wins. Maybe late. Maybe with pain. But it wins. The hall stood up. When December 2026 came, she wrote her New Year's message. In 2024, I posted a tweet. In 2025, I survived. In 2026, I won. In 2027? I'll be stronger. Because truth transformed me. And it will continue to transform you. Happy New Year. The fight for justice will continue. She shared it. At night, she looked out the window. Snow was still falling. New Year's celebrations had begun on the streets of the Bronx. Fireworks were lighting up the sky. Her phone vibrated. A message, "Oc, you didn't change. You changed the world." She smiled. Because she had finally understood, one tweet later, the world had truly changed. But not just outside, inside too. Cancel culture hadn't destroyed her. It had transformed her. Stronger. Clearer. More determined. And now, she was ready for the future. Because in the internet age, truth wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. And Ock had learned this truth by living it. That night, she closed the screen. Turned off the lights. Lay in bed. But in her mind, there was a question: if tomorrow, a new crisis erupts? A new lynching comes? The answer came immediately: I'll speak again. I'll stand again. I'll fight again. Because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now knew that truth was never easy. But it was always necessary. And a tweet could change everything overnight. But truth would last forever. One tweet later, she had lived that truth. And the world would never be the same again.